I am just getting ready to leave for 7 weeks, and I just realized I never shared my checklist of the things that I prepare before every trip. So I thought it's about time. Because if there is one thing that I learned during the last few years of traveling and also with the medical emergency that we had in Brazil, is that being prepared is the best thing that I can do. And honestly, my motto since then is that I really prepare for the worst situation and then I expect the best to happen. So basically there are two different stages to my preparation list. The first part are things that I prepare like a few weeks before my departure, and then the second part is the things that I prepare shortly before my departure. So let's talk about the things that I can already prepare a few weeks in advance. The first thing that I always make sure that we have in place is our travel insurance, just because it was so crucial for us when Everson had his medical emergency in Brazil. And if you want to know more about what happened and how health insurance really got us out of there and flew him home to get his treatment here in Austria, then I already did a video about that and I will link it in the description. With travel insurance, I basically don't care too much about cancellation insurance or if my luggage gets lost, if I get this money back. I could not care less. What is really important for me, that is unlimited cover, is that they will take care of all the medical expenses abroad and also that they will bring you home in case you cannot do the treatment abroad or it's a longer procedure. I personally always look that those two things are unlimited, and it may be different in your country, but for me as an Austrian, I have health insurance here in Austria, so the job of the travel insurance is just to bring me back home and then my regular health insurance will take over. And another thing that we always have to be aware of, since we usually go on longer trips, is that health insurance usually only covers shorter trips from like 4 to 8 weeks maximum. So if you go longer, then make sure that you get the package that really covers you the whole duration. The next item on my preparation list that I always make sure that is updated is that basically both Everson and me, we have a little page, just a document. Basically, it's just a simple list of any medications we take, any conditions we have, if there's any allergies, those things. And this document comes in extremely handy when you get into a situation abroad. Like in our case, when Everson was not really able to help me very much and nobody spoke English, only Portuguese. And my Portuguese is good enough to order a beer, but it's definitely not good enough to really talk about medical terms and all those things. And since I had to repeat the same things over and over again with different doctors and everything, at some point I just wrote it down, and since then, on every trip, we make sure that we have this document for both of us, just to make our life easier in case something would happen. The next thing on my to-do list is to check my travel eSIM and also check if I need to charge it or if I have enough money on it. My favorite eSIM so far is from Roamless, and I like it very much because first off, it's like a prepaid phone. So I don't have to buy any packages or anything. It's just anywhere I go in the world, I turn on my phone and it works and it just deducts whatever data I use from it. The second reason why I love it is that my credit does not expire. And the third one is that I can make phone calls out of the app. So I can really call anywhere in the world, landlines, mobile phones, whatever I need to. And I found that this was extremely important. And I really want to be able to do that in the case of an emergency and I need to call like the travel insurance at home or any of those things. So I always make sure that this thing is fully charged and working before I leave. And if you want to try it out too, I will leave my referral code in the description, because then I think both of us get like $5 of credit the first time you charge. So I can always use free data. So if you don't mind using that, I would be very happy. But if not, then don't. No problem either. The next checklist item may sound a little bit macabre, but I have one document where I kind of state all the important information just in case I would get, I don't know, something happens to me, I fall in a coma or I cannot talk anymore, or even worse, I die. So I want my loved ones to be able to really get the information that they need to get quickly. So I have just one document where I outline where my savings accounts are, all those things, so they find the stuff if necessary. I also, for example, make sure that all my insurances are there and all those very basic things that someone would need if I was not able to help myself anymore. So before I leave on a long trip, I usually just quickly scan this document just to see if everything is still up to date. The next thing I always do is to do a thing called Reiseregistrierung here from the Austrian government. It's basically a thing where I can register my trip with the Austrian government so they know where I am in this world. I would assume that many countries offer something similar. Here in Austria, it's just a basic form that you fill out where you go, where you plan on being more or less when, and then they know where you are. This, in my opinion, is very useful, especially when something would happen. For example, an emergency situation, if there is a natural disaster or if the war breaks out, then they know where I am, they know my contact number, they can just call me on the phone, all those things. So I personally feel very happy sharing this information with them, especially when I go on a long trip. I would probably not bother doing that when I have like a package deal and the travel agent knows where I am. But since we always organize everything ourselves, I think it makes sense to just have this little extra layer of security. The next item that I always check is the vaccines, if there is anything new that I need for my destination, and then obviously I would go and get that shot. The next item I always prepare is my emergency contact. So on most phones you can define who your emergency contact is. I just, for example, feel like when I'm traveling with Everson abroad, if something would happen to me, then he would also be affected. So during those times I would usually choose someone else to be my emergency contact, and I also always make sure that I have this information just in a post-it note in my passport with the phone number of that person. And also usually you need it for things like the Austrian registration where I go, those things. So I choose an emergency contact that is back home, that I trust helping me out if something bad would happen. And obviously I always ask this person for permission. Sorry to interrupt, I just noticed that I forgot to record something. What I wanted to say is that obviously once I picked my emergency contact, I also give him or her all the data from my travel insurance. So then just in case someone contacts them, they already have all the things ready to start the process of helping me in my need. And now back to the normal content. The next thing to prepare is if you have any prescription medicine. Luckily, I don't need anything, but Everson needs to take a few things. And when he travels, especially for longer periods of times, it's sometimes quite a lot of pills. So in that case, first, obviously, we have to get all the prescriptions and then get enough supply to really last for the duration of our trip. And once we have those things, it's obviously also important to check the airline regulations and also the customs regulations from the destination. And if necessary, if you would not be allowed to bring that much medication with you, and to avoid any troubles in some countries, it's always advisable to bring a confirmation letter from the doctor that clearly states that you need this medication in which doses, and then just keep them in the original cases, and usually then it should be fine. Honestly, we have never been checked, but in the countries where this would be a little bit of a problem, we usually are prepared. And the last thing that I can check up front that is very obvious is if I would need any visas, and if yes, then I will obviously apply for those visas. And also my passport when it expires, if there's enough pages left to get the stamps, all those things. So these are the things that I usually prepare well in advance of my trip, and I understand that it sounds a little bit grim, but as I said, I prepare for the worst situation to make my life easier in case it happens, and then I just expect the best to happen. I guess another way of saying that is better safe than sorry. So now let's move on to the things on my checklist that I do shortly before my departure. So the first item that I always prepared is to buy some comfort food for when we come home. When we still had our apartments and we left for longer periods of time, then we usually cleared out all the food from the house. Everything that could spoil or get rotten, we removed from the house. That also included everything that we had in the freezer, so we cleared everything, just for the simple fact that sometimes there is a power outage and then everything starts to melt and smell and big mess. And first off, I don't want to deal with this when I come home from a long trip, and second, I don't want anybody else who looks after my apartment during that time to have to deal with this mess. So we always cleared the whole apartment basically from any food that could spoil. But then I always made sure that we have a little bit of food for our return and also breakfast the next day and maybe a few days longer when we return on a weekend. So that would usually be a can of goulash soup or something that really lasts forever just in your cupboard. And we don't have to do a lot of cooking because more often than not, we just came home from 24 hours non-stop travel or even longer, and the last thing we wanted to do was cook, and then it was just great to have something to quickly pop in the microwave and warm up. And for breakfast we would usually buy some cereals and one of those milks that last longer, and that honestly was so often a lifesaver to be prepared for coming home. The next thing on my preparation list that I always do when we go on longer trips is to deposit my car license plates. Maybe there is something similar in your country, but I here in Austria, I can bring back my license plates to the place where I got them for up to 1 year. They will just store them, and during that time I don't have to pay the insurance and I also don't have to pay the taxes on my car. So I just put my car where it belongs for the next few months, and I quickly bring them my license plates. I don't pay anything, and when I come back from my trip, I just go there, grab my license plates again, put them on my car, and I'm ready to go. So this usually saves us a few €100 on longer trips. The next thing that I then always do is to look at my schedule for the trip and then pack strategically if there is any layover. So for example, sometimes we have to fly for a few hours, then stay one night in a hotel, then we continue, and then I always try to strategically pack a few things separately that I need for my night in the hotel. So when I sleep there, I just have to grab this little thing and don't have to unpack the whole bag. I already did a video where I talk about how I do that, so I will also link it in the description below. The next thing I do shortly before I leave is to check my roaming settings. I personally use travel eSIMs when I'm abroad, so I always make sure that I turn off data roaming on my Austrian phone number just to get no unpleasant surprises, because it's still the phone number that I use to get like PIN codes and stuff. So every once in a while I have to turn it on abroad, and while receiving, for example, the SMS that I get with my code is for free, if my phone at home would log into the internet there, it charges, I think, $10 per megabyte. So extremely expensive. So I always make sure that I dial in my roaming settings to really not have to pay these fees. The next thing at the moment is not relevant for me anymore. It's a leftover from when I had my apartment, but I usually gave someone a key just so every once in a while, if they're in the area, they can check. And I also always sent my plants on vacation. I did not own very many plants. It was usually just 2 or 3 things that did not die by the time I left yet. And I personally always think it's much easier to just bring them someone to adopt my plants for the next few weeks versus having to ask someone to come to my apartment every other day to water my plants. So I usually send my plants on vacation. I gave someone a key just in case there is any emergency that they would need to go there. And I also always made sure that my mail is forwarded to my parents' house so that no one really has to bother looking after my things. And the last thing on my list, I assume many of you do, is just checking that all my devices are charged and make sure that I have a little bit of entertainment offline. For example, that my Spotify playlists that I want to listen to are available offline, and I download a few more podcasts, just things that I want to listen to. And after doing all those things on my checklist, I'm ready for my vacation. So let me know if there's any things you do special to prepare for your trips that I could add to my checklist. Always happy to hear that. Other than that, if you liked that video, maybe consider subscribing to this channel or maybe even to my monthly newsletter. And other than that, thanks for watching and I'll see you in the next video. Bye!